Hi all, I had an interesting game last night. I was playing on board 1 for Barnet as Elizabethans. We were playing against a faraway league club in the league, Royston, but thankfully it was a home match. But we were actually playing it at Enfield under special circumstances. So, because Barnet's moving club soon, location. So I was white. I kicked off with C4, hoping for a nice positional game. My opponent David Coleman, he's 2-1, about 210 ECF, quite high rated, a bit higher than me. So I thought this was going to be a tough game. So symmetrical English to start off with, G3 G6, and the symmetry continues. I play here thinking, okay, I know D4 is weak, but it's kind of like a botvinnik system. And actually, I think he played a very, very good setup here, exceptionally good. D6 to start off with. So not carrying on the symmetry. I play this. And now E6. Very interesting. E6. Not committing to E5. I castle. Knight G E7. And there's a concern in the long run. Black might be playing D5 in the long run. And in fact, it kind of builds up for that. If you look at Black's play over the subsequent moves. I play A3, trying as though, this will be interesting. B4, B5, or, taking. B6, Rook B1, Bishop B7, and Black's position seems fairly harmonious and logical. The double fianchetto, B4, and it's pretty solid. The queen side actually. I really kind of like Black's setup. I didn't really like playing against this setup during the game because it's hard to seemingly get any easy weaknesses to try and tap into. Black's grip on D4 is not occupied yet. I think that's great that there's delayed occupation. I castle D3, Queen D7, and now I'm thinking that this is actually an annoying position because he's probably waiting for Bishop E3, and once Bishop E3 happens, then he'll pounce with Knight D4, and it's kind of awkward. This position, not being able to take on D4 with the bishop, and taking with the knight would seem to give passive knights. And not only that, if taking the bishop, kind of where would the knight go? In fact, and maybe Black's got F5, just challenging my light square bishop. And of course, if I lose my light square bishop and Black's got this kind of space advantage, it would seem a bit shaky actually for my king. So anyway, I play B5. Just inviting Knight D4 here, and I take now, C takes, and the awkward looking Knight A4. The knight on the rim is dim, yes. At the moment it's not so difficult to exploit it, and potentially if Black ever played D5 then maybe C5, the knight would actually be doing something. Rook AC8, keeping a bind on the position. And still, Black's position is remarkably aesthetic, even at this stage. I'm thinking, okay, I'll wait for this D5 break, I'll play Rook E1. And actually, it didn't happen. He actually played E5 here. And, okay, I thought a little bit of relief. E5. I played Bishop G5, trying to provoke weakness, otherwise I'm going to play Queen D2 and maybe get rid of this bishop. F6. I drop the bishop back, King H8. And now perhaps a bit too adventurous here. Probably I'm suffering from this idea that I've presented just recently on the channel, the internal qualities of the position. The thing is, chess is a brutal game. I think, for example, Alekhine proved that against Capablanca. Capablanca was one of the greatest positional players ever. But, Alekhine brought great dynamism. It's the dynamism, things like king safety, which make chess even more interesting and even more complex than just basic positional play. And I thought here, from a positional perspective, that this knight might not need to be rerouted if C5 can be played. And one way of trying to get to play C5 maybe is like this, taking, waiting for this, Bishop B4, which would support C5. And that was an interesting plan, I thought. So I played F4, but it's, if we do respect the dynamism of the position here and king safety, there's a way of making sure the white king is pretty solid. This bishop, if one wants to make sure it's never kind of taken off with this one, this is probably not the way to do it. The problem with F4, it is kind of weakening the king side. I could actually make sure this bishop's permanently blunted with a move like f3, which looks ugly, but I think a lot of dynamic moves are often looking ugly. It secures the fianchetto's bishop. If there's ever f5, you know, takes, we're never getting rid of this bishop. That's a very interesting option here to consider, even though it looks absolutely terrible in some respects. But there might be, you know, some mileage in it, just playing a move like f3. Just from a, you know, dynamic perspective, king safety. So a variation like I checked out earlier, like this, say like this, and maybe even there's some queenside play if the white king isn't being battered down. This might be kind of interesting. Say something like this. This is okay. You see that the bishop is supporting these two key squares. Any doubled rooks, you know, the bishop supporting f1 is important if I want to play rook f1 later. So it's nice to have a fianchetto. It's nice to lock this bishop out. And the king safety is quite good here. Now compare this to what happens in the game after f4, and maybe it makes the game slightly instructive. That f4 actually kind of weakens. If I get rid of the fianchetto, then f1 is weakened, which means doubling rooks is more effective. Let's have a look. f5. I take on e5, and I carry on this plan. And it looks at this point I was quite optimistic, because I thought, yes, I've done this, but I've slightly weakened my king. There's one less pawn around my king. And not only that, my fianchetto bishop, my defensive bishop, is going to be taken off. Now, of course, we know that in Grandmaster games, sometimes Kramnik's volunteering his light square bishop. But I'm pretty sure he's really aware of king safety issues most of the time. Now here, my opponent fought for a long time. And maybe it was kind of bluff move to allow c5 here, because it looks pretty dangerous, c5 for c6. If I take f takes e4, and perhaps I should have taken the plunge, even if there is a technical refutation here, to play c5. One of my thoughts during the game, we spent so long, it must be right. Like there's an exchange sack, for example, takes it. You wouldn't want to give up the light square bishop, so you take here. And I thought this position was kind of interesting. But it turns out, you know, the engine's not too impressed by this position. Why is the exchange up? There looks to be, you know, an entry on f2, but it turns out this position might have good enough defensive resources. If it's not like a mating attack, then this position, the exchange up, should be okay. For example, taking, putting the queen on that diagonal, and it looks as though rook f2 is really dangerous. Yeah, for g2. How dangerous is this position? Queen g4 might actually be a very good defensive move here. So any rook f2, there's queen e4. But yeah, I was a bit scared about playing this sort of thing, but it does seem as though I'm the exchange up. And okay, it's an extra pawn, but it's double pawns. It's possible that the 2-to-1, it's possible this is a very good position that I should have headed for, basically. And I didn't. I chickened out. And to great regret, actually. And yes, one of my colleagues after the match said, why didn't I play c5? This is the point. I could have played c5. Yes, it's one of the key moments of the game. From a technical point of view, though, it turns out black has an amazing concept here, a tactical concept, in rook fd8, just allowing the win of a piece. Like c6, taking here, and a lot of pawns are being collected here, the knight having to go back, and it seems actually better for black in this position, technically. This is now technically better for black. So the knight's like stumbling around and maybe just taking on d3 or e3, and this looks really good for black. Whereas this knight's going, hasn't got brilliant prospects. Or maybe just removing the c4 post, you know, taking here. It seems pretty dangerous, this kind of thing. Black has now 7 pawns, amassed 7 pawns in this position. So 4 pawns up at the moment. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, technically it seems rook fd8 is the way to go. But anyway, I take here, and I'm losing my fianchetto bishop. And there are big consequences of this. You know, all the light squares but particularly f1. You know, if I ever want to play rook f1, bishop g2 is often bishop on g2 is often useful. It would have been nice for that bishop to have simply been blunted, not weakening my king position. And also, my king position is slightly weakened further now with, unless I want to like lose c4 and give a passed pawn, I have to take with the rook, so I'm weakening f1 again. So it's a double weakening of f1, the removal of the bishop, the rook now having to waste time to come back. And he starts simply doubling, yes, emphasizing f1. Why not just go for f1? Queen e2, knight f5, as though e3 is pretty painful as well. I drop my bishop back. And now the doubling. It just seems very simple for black to play. He's done a lot of damage to my king safety. This kind of airy king side here. So much for internal quality. The dynamism of chess, the brutal dynamics of the game, like king safety, make chess an even more interesting game, an even more complex, frustrating game, but full of joy, potentially when you win, and full of sorrow when you lose. So rook e1, king g8. Sorry, rook e1, king g8 was played. I'm tempted for an exchange sack, but it's not even with check now. And I thought he could just evict my queen. If I did this exchange sack, I think he just evicts my queen with something like rook e7. And yes, you know, I don't think the exchange down there is pretty good for me. So I plod along with bishop b4, knight d6. And this is the moment where I could have perhaps given king safety a big shot here, an injection shot, to try and stay on the board. I would have to play bishop takes d6 in this position. I think this is the point, to play bishop takes d6 and then c5, with the idea that the knight can reroute with tempo. So say takes here, rerouting the tempo. Note the queen's guarding these two squares. The queen might give herself up for two rooks. And in this position, after queen f6, you know, it's not so bad. Knight c4, not getting mated just yet. In fact, the knight controls e3, so I think king safety is largely addressed here. So this was the key moment where I think bishop takes d6 was absolutely needed. Unfortunately, I play a move again, weakening f1. How many times have I weakened f1? I lost the fianchetto. The rook plonked itself on e4. I'm sort of going out my way to weaken f1 here with queen g4 again, and now rook f5. So the queen's left f1 as well. Everybody's leaving f1 in this game. There's going to be a problem with this, and it's in this position now. You know, black is ready for the trebling. And the last time I faced trebling from Eames, yes, I lost that game trebling. Funny enough, this is a very difficult position as well, faced with the trebling and my abandonment of the f1 square throughout the entire game, because I have this fantastic new idea that positional play is amazingly internal quality. Unfortunately in chess you do need to calculate a lot of variations, and it's not just about what we call tactics. I'll consider it an appreciation of a dynamic appreciation of positions, the dynamic aspects like king safety. It's not about tactics, it's the subject to appreciate is king safety here, and I haven't really appreciated king safety, and this is now not good enough to take on d6 and play this c5, which I notice in this position, because black simply trebles. I've abandoned f1 throughout the game, and there's no way of defending this position, it seems. If I try and bring the queen back here, then f2 is a big problem. I've really shot my king safety to pieces. There's rook f2, ouch, and I'm going to be faced with the firing squad in this position of black's pieces in pretty short order, surely. Exactly how, well, maybe something like bishop h6 to e3. There's not enough time to do this maneuver here in response to bishop h6. This looks good as an example. The rooks just seem in the wrong place. So yes, this is pretty bad. I play king g2 with an evacuation plan for my king. Check. Unfortunately, h5, the queen is being kicked off this diagonal for queen f5 to be really destructive. So rook d8, a desperate move with my opponent just having still a completely winning mating attack with g5. And here I resign. And I'm thinking, Oh dear, I've been brought back down to reality that chess is a lot about dynamic stuff, not just about positional play. I've really been knocked down to reality. But that's what makes chess such an interesting and rich game. You know, there's all these dimensions in chess which make it a fantastic game, you know, to enjoy, you know, for your whole life really. You never really kind of master it, you know. You think, you know, chess is about positional play. One day you might score a win or two, then the next day you get knocked down, you know, your king safety shot to pieces, and you wonder, you know, why didn't you respect the dynamic aspects of the position? And yes, you know, that's just the fun of chess. So the good thing is, anyway, that we managed to hold on to a draw in the match and come second, therefore, to Watford in the Hertfordshire League. So it wasn't all bad. I did push everyone down being on board one, and we, you know, so holding the match is mission achieved in terms of the league position, which is one of the great things about, you know, league chess. You're not just playing for yourself, but for your team and team position within the league. So I'm pleased Barnet has now, with this result. There's only one adjourned game. I think it's good for us. So I think we've basically secured, you know, second place in the Hearts League. So I'm pleased overall for the team, even if I'm a bit sort of surprised how crushed I was last night. But you know, I think there's some instructive points here. Just chess is a very rich game. You've got to look at all the angles, and continually weakening F1. And having the fianchetto bishop, losing the fianchetto bishop, is sometimes a recipe for disaster. Especially, you know, when the opponent's pieces start trebling. It's a fantastic example of coordination. The trebling of pieces, the rooks and the queens. It's a great weapon when there's weaknesses around, like F1. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Hope you got something out of it. Thanks very much.